This is a reading from the Gospel of John. Sometime after this, Jesus went off to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, or of Tiberias, and a large crowd followed him, impressed by the signs he gave by curing the sick. Jesus climbed the hillside and sat down there with his disciples. It was shortly before the Jewish feast of Passover. Looking up, Jesus saw the crowds approaching and said to Philip, "Where can we buy some bread for these people to eat?" He only said this to test Philip. He himself knew exactly what he was going to do. Philip answered, 200 denarii would only buy enough to give them a small piece each. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said, "There's a small boy here with 5 loaves and 2 fish, but what is that between so many?" Jesus said to them, "Make the people sit down." There was plenty of grass there, and as many as 5,000 sat down. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and gave them out to all who were sitting ready. He then did the same with the fish, giving out as much as was wanted. When they had eaten enough, he said to the disciples, "Pick up the pieces left over so that nothing gets wasted." So they picked them up and filled 12 hampers with scraps left over from the meal of the 5 barley loaves. The people, seeing this sign that he had given, said, "This really is the prophet who is to come into the world." Jesus, who could see that they were about to take him away by force and make him king, escaped back to the hills by himself. There was an American girl, Alexandra Scott, who was diagnosed with cancer just a few days before her first birthday. When she was 4 years old, she understood that the doctors that took care of her needed more money to discover a cure. She decided to open a lemonade stand outside her house, selling glasses of lemonade for $1. She raised $2,000 that day. Unfortunately, in 2004, at 8 years of age, Alexandra passed away. In those 4 years, she had raised over $1 million for pediatric research. In the next 8 years, over $30 million had been raised through the Alex's Lemonade Stand charity. I went to their website to see that over $300 million have been raised by her charity to this date. A girl with seemingly nothing but a few lemons did a great thing. Today in the Gospel, Jesus did a great thing with seemingly nothing. He fed thousands of people with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. He revealed his power. His disciples and the boy knew what had happened, how the 5 loaves and 2 fish were multiplied to feed the multitude. Finally, it appears that those who shared the loaves and fishes discovered where the food came from, and they wanted to carry him off to make him king. However, he walked away. It was not his time, and this was not the manner that his Father had chosen for him to be recognized as the Son of God, the long-awaited Messiah. The first reading from the second book of Kings also records a miraculous multiplication of bread. God uses Elisha, the prophet, as the instrument of this miracle. Both readings share 5 common elements. First, food is brought to the servant of God. Second, the amount of food is specified. Third, the amount of food is insufficient. Fourth, the servant of God ignores the logical objection and commands the food to be distributed. And finally, fifth, the crowd not only had enough to eat, but there were leftovers. Both readings reflect the power of God to make something out of nothing. Our psalm speaks of this generous God. The hand of the Lord feeds us. He answers all our needs. Just as in last week's readings, the generosity and compassion of God is revealed, we are encouraged to hope in God and trust in his love and blessing. Our second reading from St. Paul to the Ephesians also bears witness to the power of God. Paul tells the Ephesians they were called to the one hope, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all. Who better than Paul could assure them? In his own life, he had experienced God's transforming power, from the persecutor of the Christian to the great apostle to the Gentiles. He experienced in his own flesh the power of God to make something out of nothing, his divine grace working a miracle in his life. God has that power to multiply, to transform, and to make something out of nothing in our lives too. In our human condition, too often we limit that miraculous power of God. Perhaps it may be because of fear that once we truly give ourselves over to God, He will be in charge and He will do things in us that we do not expect. He will surprise us, but in a way that we do not feel in control. For many of us, this is a no-no. Another reason why we may limit the power of God is that we don't trust Him enough. Sometimes we're not sure whether God loves us enough or cares enough about us to make something out of nothing. I mentioned a few weeks ago that earlier in my life I was shy and lacked self-confidence. I remember as a seminarian, my rector of studies telling me that I would be a great resurrectionist. I didn't believe him. If he had told me that later I would be general director of St. Andrew's School, a school of 1,400 students, I would have laughed in his face. Or that I would be elected provincial superior of our province, or that I would be elected superior general. How could God do that? I never ever dreamed such things could happen in my life. My own fear and doubt could have kept me from those life-changing experiences. Fortunately, the grace of God was stronger than my fear and doubt, and I responded to the opportunities of grace, and God did something in me, something out of which I thought I was nothing. Thanks be to God that in those and many other moments I did serve God faithfully, despite myself. I invite you this weekend to take some time to reflect on your own lives and how God may have made something out of nothing for you. I bet God has done miracles in your lives too. He has surprised you like He did the people who came out to hear Him and whom He fed. Letting go of that fear and doubt have been and will be the first step to doing God's will and revealing His transforming power in and through us. But it depends on our willingness, on our disposition. Just as God worked through Alexandra Scott, Elisha, Paul, and Jesus to make something out of nothing, or so it seemed, He can also act in and through us to do something great for God and make manifest the people and community that we are. If Alexandra Scott's simple efforts that began with selling lemonade can raise over $300 million for pediatric cancer research, there's no limits to what God can do here and now.